Welcome back to the Architecture Corner. Okay, today we're tackling something pretty common, I think, a real pain point.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you're building those complex distributive systems and you want to test locally.
Yeah, testing locally is always the dream, isn't it?
Yeah.
Especially with cloud stuff.
Exactly. And, well, step functions are amazing for orchestrating calls between services, but testing those connections on your own machine.
Uh-huh. That's where it used to get tricky. You'd hit a wall.
Right, you'd have your step function maybe talking to SQS or invoking a Lambda directly using a service integration.
And even if you were running step functions local, the emulator, it didn't help with those specific integrations.
No, you actually needed like a real connection, a live resource out there in AWS.
Which kind of defeats the purpose of local testing, doesn't it? You're suddenly dependent on the network, on deployed resources. It slows you right down.
Totally frustrating. But that brings us to the good stuff. The reason we're talking about this, there's an AWS tip from Mario Bittencourt about a really significant update.
Ah, yes, the mocking capability. This is the big news.
Tell us about it. So, AWS updated the step function's local emulator.
To support mocking for those service integrations, finally.
Okay, what does that actually mean for developers day-to-day? Mocking.
It means you can now tell the local emulator, hey, when you get to this specific state in my workflow, the one that talks to SQS, for example, don't actually call SQS. Instead, you tell it, just pretend you called it and return this specific response that I define.
Oh, interesting. So you control the output of that step locally.
Precisely. And it's flexible, too. The source mentions setting up different scenarios for mocking. You could have, say, a success path scenario.
So maybe like a temporary failure scenario.
Exactly. So you can test how your workflow handles different outcomes from that external service. It's all configured in the responses section. You specify exactly what the mock step should return for each scenario.
Okay, that's already pretty useful. But the source mentioned something even cooler, I think, about sequences.
Ah, yes. This is really powerful. You can define a sequence of responses for a mocked state.
So like, first time it fails, second time it works.
Exactly like that. Imagine testing your retry logic in step functions. Before, simulating a temporary failure followed by success was, well, honestly, a nightmare locally.
Yeah, how would you even do that reliably?
Or probably couldn't, not easily. Now you just tell the mock config, first invocation, return temporary failure, second invocation, return success. Boom.
Wow, okay. That makes testing resiliency so much easier.
Totally. So the bottom line is you can develop and test your step functions workflows, including those service integration parts, completely on your local machine.
Like the example in the source.
Yeah.
A flow hitting Lambda, then SQS. You can test that whole thing without needing a real SQS-Q connection just by mocking the SQS end state.
Right. It massively speeds up that inner development loop. Build, test, iterate, build, test. Much faster feedback.
So, thinking about you listening right now, why is this such a big deal? Well, if you use step functions to connect different services.
Which many, many people do.
This update is a huge boost for your productivity and your confidence, right? You can actually prove your error handling works for those integrated services locally.
It removes a big chunk of friction, makes it easier to build robust systems. The source also kind of nods towards related concepts, like sagas and orchestration versus choreography, if you want to dig deeper later.
Good point.
Okay, let's wrap this up. The main takeaway. Being able to mock service integrations in step functions local, it's a significant step forward.
It makes local testing for these complex distributed workflows much more practical and reliable.
So here's something to think about. How could using this kind of powerful local mocking change the way you approach testing the tricky interactions in your systems?
Definitely food for thought.
Indeed. Hey, don't forget to check the description for links, including that AWS tip we mentioned. And of course, subscribe. It's free. Subscribe to the Architecture Corner newsletter so you don't miss our next exploration. Thanks for tuning in.